Today, we are diving into vicarious liability for the national portion of the real estate exam. This legal doctrine is a cornerstone of agency law and establishes how responsibility flows through a real estate transaction. At its core, vicarious liability means that one person is held legally responsible for the actions or omissions of another person based on their relationship. In our industry, the most common application of this concept involves the relationship between a designated broker and their affiliated licensees. On the exam, you need to understand that a broker is generally held vicariously liable for the professional conduct of the salespersons and associate brokers registered under them. This is often referred to by the Latin term respondeat superior, which literally translates to "let the superior answer." If an agent commits a fair housing violation or misrepresents a material fact about a property, the broker can be held just as responsible as the agent who actually committed the act. This happens because the law assumes the broker has the duty and authority to supervise their agents. You will often see exam questions that try to trick you by mentioning that the agent is an independent contractor rather than an employee. Do not let this confuse you, because even though an agent is an independent contractor for tax purposes, the broker still maintains vicarious liability for the agent's real estate activities under licensing law. Another high-yield area for the exam involves the liability of the client or the principal. While the broker is almost always liable for the agent, the client is usually only vicariously liable if they had knowledge of the agent's improper acts or if they directed the agent to perform them. For example, if a seller tells their listing agent to hide a known roof leak and the agent obeys, the seller is vicariously liable because they participated in the fraud. However, if the agent decides to lie about the roof on their own without the seller's knowledge, the seller might be shielded from liability in some jurisdictions while the broker remains on the hook. To help you remember this for test day, use the phrase, "the master answers for the messenger." This reminds you that the person in the superior position of authority is the one who must answer for the mistakes of the person they sent out to do the work. When you see a question asking who is responsible for a mistake in a transaction, always look for the broker first, because they are the ultimate safety net and the primary target for vicarious liability claims. Watch out for wording that suggests a broker can escape liability by simply having a written policy against the bad behavior. Having a policy is not enough to sever the chain of vicarious liability if the broker failed to actually supervise the agent. The exam wants to see if you understand that the responsibility chain starts with the agent, but almost always links back to the broker. This also ties into the concept of imputed notice, which suggests that what the agent knows, the principal is also assumed to know. If an agent receives an offer and fails to tell the seller can still be held liable for failing to respond because the agent's knowledge is legally imputed to the seller. This creates a very strong chain of accountability that you must be able to trace on the exam. If an agent commits an act of negligence, like forgetting to include a contingency in a contract, the broker cannot simply point to the agent's error and walk away. The broker is expected to have systems in place to catch these errors, and their failure to do so is why vicarious liability exists. Focus on the fact that this is a strict legal relationship, and it does not require the broker to have bad intentions or even be present when the mistake happened. Liability is tied to the license relationship and the duty of supervision, regardless of the broker's personal involvement.